one of the things I'm curious about for what you said there is, you know, obviously, and I think you're right, we hear this from our customers as well, that like, it's very tricky to ask a human to oversee literally every single thing that the AI is doing, because eventually at some point they're just like, well, I could have just done this myself, right? But also at the same time, it's also hard to really delegate to the LLM the decision about whether or not to ask for human approval. There's not just tricky from a technological perspective, but maybe more importantly from a regulatory perspective as well, just like meeting your compliance obligations. And so one of the things that I'm curious about is like, what is the future of human in the loop? Do you guys view that as being something that eventually does get delegated to an LLM to decide, like, do I need human approval here? Or do you think that that's deterministic for the foreseeable future where, okay, maybe we get more permissive in the sense that we deterministically allow a greater number of actions to be executed, but ultimately the set of things that should require approval will always be enforced deterministically?
Yeah, I think that's probably on a line, so it's going to very much start very deterministic at the moment, but it has to get less and less deterministic. And I think a couple of things will help guide that. So one, as an example, I think is, as I mentioned previously, hyper personalization and learning from what a human does is going to feed into that. So, if I'm comfortable guiding the LLM and saying, you make the decision for a lot of these things, over time, it should learn that this is how I operate, and then it should react to me, and it should, treat your access entirely differently, even though we might be doing the exact same use case. So I think that there is the opportunity for every use case for every user to be entirely different. That'll present challenges, but I think that's where we'll start to see, it's not necessarily one fits all. So we grant access or we don't grant access, because that becomes very dangerous. So the responsibility on the user. The other thing I would say is, if you think about talking to an agent, we kind of we're so keen on deterministic systems that we expect everything to be deterministic. But if you had an associate that you're training to do some work for you, you'd expect them to sometimes make mistakes, sometimes get things wrong, and you correct them, and they learn from that. So I think there's going to be a certain amount of, actually, we should approach AI to a degree in the same way, where it will make mistakes, it will get things wrong. Hopefully with the bounds of not going too far off the rails, because the controls are in place, and we do that. We have a lot of guardrails to make sure things like that don't happen.